Hi all. I can't do my normal facing the camera and waffling at the moment because my phone is bust and I managed to miss the delivery on the replacement one. So I'm using a GoPro that I use for track days, but I can't tell when it's looking at me. So anyway, the good news is, you might notice I'm in the garage, got a build table, and there's bits of metal. So I am finally started on this project. Yeah, unbelievable, isn't it? For those of you who followed from the start, you probably thought this would never ever happen. So before I actually get into the meat of this video, I've got a few thank yous to do. I've installed a whiteboard on my garage wall to help remind me of stuff. But I thought I'd do some thank yous. So a few of you have been along virtually from the start of this and are really helpful, commenting and making suggestions and just being generally helpful with this project. So thank you very much. I suppose the last one's the most important one, but please keep them coming. Please keep the comments going, the help going, the advice going. It helps motivate me, but also some of the stuff you've asked has really helped me with the planning to make sure that I don't fall into some huge great big pitfalls that could cost me a lot of time and money. So keep it up, please. Cheers. I don't know when this is frigging video and not. So started laying out the build table. We have our datum here. Okay. Once upon a time, when I used to work for the MOD, part of my job was with new build ships in the shipyards. I was one of the people that went along to make sure they'd kind of built them straight. And even on a warship there is a datum line, and you take that as being the definite point and check everything else is in the correct relation to the datum point. On the ships it all got quite complicated because it was on the water line, and one of my jobs was checking that things like the weapon systems were in the correct place, so you were doing it over 3 dimensions and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that's what I'm doing with this project. So on here, unfortunately I'm actually going to be making the chassis the other way around to the way my drawing is, basically because the engine's going to be this end and it's easier to get the engine into the garage there than down the other end. All that practicality. Anyway, so my datum line, which is here, is that line there. So I've already made one cock up by putting these on the datum. They should be on the back, so I will be moving those shortly. We also have a secondary datum which is at 90 degrees. It doesn't need to be through the middle of the build table, it just needs to be at 90 degrees to my primary datum, and it needs to be known. It's all about knowing where you are, and then once you know where these points are, you can then reference everything back to them. So this is where the chassis side would be, my white line here to 950. So I've got on here, so it tells me it's 950mm from the datum, and it's 550mm out from the midline datum, which just happens to be this here. So we go forward 950, and this is 550 from the middle because this whole length is 1100. Then I'm going to be bolting down my various brackets to each position, so each one of these is printed to be the correct size. I'm bolting these down, and these are effectively acting as a jig. Now you see I've printed them like this. The idea being, hopefully, is I can then tack weld the chassis in position in these, and these are printed to quite high accuracy, you know, down to 0.1 of a degree angles coming in. So then once these are in, obviously then chop the metal to the right sizes. So today's job is I'm going to get all these in position, and I will then, hopefully if there's time, I will start with cutting some of the 22mm metal, which is the bottom stuff, to size and to angle so as it's all ready to tack weld. Oh, by the way, yeah, you're probably thinking these may well melt a bit when I start welding. You could well be right, they may well, they will certainly go soft, but to a certain extent it doesn't matter because I'm not going into mass production here, so they don't need to be redoable. I may well make a more substantial jig for suspension tubes, because that's the sort of stuff that if I ever do have a ding, I might have to make new ones of. So I've also got out here as a reminder of where I'm going. Sometimes I'm fine, obviously I did the drawings, so I'm fine with the drawings, but sometimes the little models can help as well. It's just occurred to me that I actually can't progress with this because I've got the roll bar. You can see the dimensions are slightly wider than they should have been, but I could tolerate the 18mm wider. That's not really that big an issue. But what I can't tolerate is it's effectively twisted, which would mean that one side is the car's shorter than the other. So I won't say who the supplier of this is, other than they profess to be the tube benders of choice, and also when I went up and picked up the bars originally, that one was wrong, but they've corrected their errors quickly. I messaged them a video about this and they've said they will send me another one, but that these are surprisingly flexible, which slightly worrying, and suggested I put a heavy weight on this side and a long bit of tube on this side and try and bend it flat. In some ways that will help quite a bit because I've already cut this to length, so obviously that is done to match that, which is slightly different to my drawings because that is 18mm too wide, and I don't really want to have to do all this again. So I think I'll give it a go. After a couple of minutes of scratching my head, I'm thinking, well, the only thing I've got that's really very heavy is to park the van on top of this end. But obviously, I can't bend that down. So no, I'm just going to tell them they need to send me another one. So I'll have to change my plans slightly. Good morning. Well, I'm still on GoPro at the moment, so I'm trying to do a bit of a talk to camera thing, but to be honest I'm not entirely sure if I'm in frame or not. So if there's a picture of the wall of my garage talking to you at the moment, you know why. Okay, so we're a whole next day. I've done a whole lot more of laying out of this build table, so I've got most of the bits in, most of my guides, jigs, I don't know, call them what you will. And the lot who did the tube bending for me, I've got to give it to them. Their first go at doing stuff is not too great, considering that one was done wrong and the original roll bar was done wrong. But they are very, very quick at fixing their errors. I messaged them about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and 10 o'clock this morning a new roll bar's arrived. So first thing's going to be is seeing if this one's actually flat. Slight caveat on that. First thing is having some coffee because it's bloody freezing out here today. My coffee's only been out here a couple of minutes and it's already lukewarm. That's it unwrapped, and it's certainly better than the last one, but it's certainly not perfect. I'm not sure if anyone's used any like tube bender type roll cage services before. So obviously everyone works to a tolerance. What sort of tolerance should I expect? Am I being... It's about 3mm there. Now I'm trying to build everything on this chassis to within a mil. Maybe I'm being over ambitious. I mean, that's usable. It's not perfect, but it's usable. Let's see how wide it is. Okay, so we're on that end, and this is supposed to be 130 wide. We're 129. Well, again, it's usable, but 10 mil, you know, that seems a bit much to me. And this cross piece I made to fit the other one being slightly too wide. Bearing in mind they're off the same drawing, both of these. So we butt that up against there, and then the other end. Christ mate, what are we looking at? So these are both done to the same drawing, and we're, you know, probably over 35 mil different. Oh, well, there we go. That's what we've got. We'll work with what we've got. Okay, so the legs of this are slightly too long, that's okay, because I expect them to be supplied slightly too long. So I'm going to chop this one down, chop the other one down. It should both be 950, and I will check by going on the floor. Oh, let's stick that in a hole. That might help my chop saw work a bit better. Right. Oh, these pens are great, by the way. These work really well. They're like tyre pens, but a bit smaller and a bit finer. I got them from like a stationery shop. Anyway, so when you come down, it's just obviously make sure your mark is slightly on the inside. I might be pointing out the bleeding obvious, but there we go. Just double checking now I've cut them that the length is right. So that is spirit level on the bench, spirit level up on the top of the bar, and I reckon that bubble is in exactly the same place, which must mean both legs are the same length. So that's good. That is all trimmed and level. See, we're pretty well at 950, which was the height of the roll bar I wanted. For those of you that's been following this, basically I used my exo booster as a reference because I wanted the bar to be a little bit higher than in the exo booster, because my head with a crash helmet on is uncomfortably close to the top of the roll bar. So one doff roll bar, put it into storage in the trailer. Likelihood is I'll probably find a use for those bits of metal. The guys at the tube bender didn't want it back, so may well be handy for something. Not too sure what, but probably find something I'll screw up during the build that I'll need some extra tube for. I tell you what, actually getting out into the garage finally and starting to do stuff is definitely a bit of a relief for me. Those of you who are following this will know I've mentioned before I've got ADHD, and one of the quirks, if you like, some people call it disability, but I wouldn't, with ADHD is obviously being a bit impatient and wanting to get on with things, and all the planning and reading up about stuff is great food for my autistic half of my brain. But the ADHD side of my brain goes, oh, for Christ's sake, let's just get on with something. So now being out here now, cutting bits of metal, and hopefully before the end of this video, maybe even welding bits of metal, is doing my ADHD side of my brain a world of good. It's really enjoying it. Oh, by the way, obviously sometimes in these videos I talk about having ADHD, being autistic and dyslexic. They're not things I'm embarrassed of. They're things that I've only, well, apart from dyslexia, I've kind of known about that most of my life. The ADHD and the autism I was only diagnosed with about 1.5 years ago. But it's not because I was diagnosed a year and a half ago, doesn't mean that's when it happened. This is something I've had all my life. I'm not embarrassed by it. If you have any questions or anything, stick them down in the thing. I'm quite happy to answer anything on there. That's part of the reason I'm kind of doing this channel, is to help those of you perhaps who have the same conditions as me, to recognise that it's no big a deal. You just get on and do the things that work for you, don't do the things that don't. But also those of you who perhaps are less familiar about it and think, well, it does seem to be a little bit of a thing at the moment, doesn't it? I'm sure the Daily Mail's been banging on about all these people claiming they're autistic and ADHD when they're not, and have questions about it. Like, why do people with ADHD and autism sometimes waffle a bit and get sidetracked and go off on things? Yes, I think I might have just demonstrated that. And sometimes lose their train of thought entirely. So what I'm getting at, don't be embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed by it. In fact, in some ways, I'm quite proud of it. I wouldn't be me if I didn't have these things. So if you have any questions about that side of stuff, as opposed to building this, ask. I'm happy to answer. Rightio, so that has been, I've recut that, and as you can see, my build table has a roll hoop. It's not welded in or anything. I'm gonna do the whole of the base, I think, ready before I start any welding. I'm gonna start from the front bit. So I've cut, it's a little bit long, but I've cut these to a convenient length. Then I'm gonna cut the angle on here so they butt together in a kind of a point. Right, when I made my little jig and did my calculations, the angle they join at is 66.5 degrees. So I need to set this so as I end up with 66.5. So hopefully my maths isn't wrong here. Each one I need to cut 33.25. Now the way I've set this up is, because it's all at a 90, I need to take 33.25 off of 90 degrees and use my little angle thing here, which is, if my mental arithmetic's right, is pretty well that angle. So I'm going to set that up like that. I'll chop them both together at the same time, because then I know they're exactly the same angle, and fingers crossed, when I put them back in there, they'll butt together. Is it going to work? Right, okay, so my maths is wrong. Good job I cut those with a bit of excess. Just had that call I like. There's my wife saying lunch is ready, so I'm going to have my lunch and rethink that. Perhaps I need to have done those at 66. So, just had a scrammy lunch with cheese and a pickle sandwich. Anyway, back to this. So obviously my logic is completely flawed and wrong. This thing will only only cut up to 45 degrees. So what I'm going to do is leave these angles as they are, because they join together quite nicely. And I'm going to notch that one and weld on so as it's on the side. So I apologise now if any of you have just spent the last minute or so slapping your head and thinking, Jesus Christ, this bloke's stupid, how is he ever going to build a car? Because, obviously, I needed to set it to that angle there. So the way I've double checked is actually just using this and lining up with my reference line. Anyway, I'll now cut it to the right angles. I did try doing the notch cutter thing, but it's right over that angle. It's not a lot of help, so I think I'm going to kind of, if you like, hand notch this one. So it might not come as a surprise, trying to notch by hand, it's really quite tricky. I started actually making it worse the more I tried, so that's not brilliant by any means, but I hopefully can sort that out with a bit of welding. And yeah, welded. So I feel like there should be a fanfare. Once I've got that all turned on, this is going to be the first weld of my build. So I think we need some trumpeters. There we are, very first bit of weld done. A little bit of cleaning that side. I'm quite happy with that one. I need to just brush that down. Yeah, so now I've chopped the end off, partly says I can check my welding to make sure I'm getting like full penetration, which is looking okay, and partly because it's not a stressed part of the front here, and I don't really want to be driving around with a point at the front of the car, even though that, you know, it's going to have splitter and stuff well in front. I don't really think driving around like a kind of Boadicea's long lost son is a very good idea. So I think I will wrap this video up at this point. Hopefully you can see from this one the way I'm kind of doing. I don't know if you want to call those bits of plastic the 3D plastic jigs or no. I am going to just put a bit of foil inside all of them, just so when I do tack weld, obviously I'm only going to be tack welding in position there, but just tack weld just to help protect them a little bit. Yeah, and I've done the first bit of welding, so the car is officially started. Hopefully getting the gist of it all now. If you haven't already done so, please like, but more importantly subscribe to the channel. I'm only a few off of hitting the magic number where YouTube says, ah right, okay, we will pay you a few pennies, and it probably is pennies, but a few pennies for the advertising that currently they're taking 100% of the money for, that pops up on these. So if you think that I deserve a few pennies from YouTube more than YouTube deserve the money, please hit the subscribe button now. And I'll see you soon. Cheers and bye.